You know, the artist is always extracting. It's the found art piece. Out of the art of abstracting, you know, you create that new art piece. The Indian is really basically finding a photograph, an 8x10 photograph, and using that and going back to like the design process so that we get to see this Indian in a context and having this radiant idea of a tribal kind of world. These are natural. They were coming out of my schooling. I was trained, and then I broke away and created my own way of working. I moved to Southern California in 1950, but it's really about my grandfather having been here in the 30s working on the Palomar Observatory. So, you know, they're looking at it as designers, you know, so it's a design community, so we moved there. One way of looking at this is like having a clouded window, you know, and you pick up a rag and you know, wipe it off. And as you're wiping it off, all of a sudden you see an ocean out there for the first time. You're mesmerized and hypnotized by that. Coming from the east in the Chesapeake Bay, it didn't have a horizon line like that. So as a child, as you come to California, you know, I mean, it's a big state. What a mystery, you know? So you go down to the edge of it and you touch it. And then let's say you see a surfer for the first time and you're very curious, like, what is this all about? There's really a transition between the beat, you know, of the 50s and the pop of the 60s. Hollywood and Malibu became synonymous through the movies. It became a place that lost its integrity, you know, through its exposure by media. The media, the way it looked at surfing, just turned it into a cartoon. There's a folk culture of surfing, and then there's the media's version of what surf culture should be. And that is the breaking point where the one meets the other. And it actually, of all the places to meet, it meets with the endless summer.
The dream of every surfer is to find a perfect wave. The endless summer is a dream come true as two young American surfers follow the summer around the world. Be sure to see The Endless Summer, filmed in brilliant color by Bruce Brown.
I was going to go to the surf industry, and I did the SI for the reasons that I could do that in my bedroom, you know. And that got me to Surfer Magazine. When I was a surfer, the thing that happened is I was able to do this poster with it being published everywhere and billboards or whatever, you know. So here's a young guy who's 23, 24 years old, you know, in an art school, you know, getting this huge play in the pop culture of that time. You know, it was a piece of pop art. So I went international, you know. I mean, as The Endless Summer went around the world, so did my career. Went everywhere. Cadelia, you know, granted, starts at Capitol Records because the Beatles are so much a part of the scene at that time. The art director at Capitol reached over into his bookcase and he pulled out an Endless Summer soundtrack album cover. I had a job just like that. And I went on and did the Beatles Magical Mystery Tour right after that.
You did Wild Honey too for Beach Boys.
Yeah, that was in Nick Benet's office. And, you know, Linda Ronstadt was his girlfriend at the time. And you had Stone Ponies and Hearts and Flowers. So Pinnacle was rolling during that time. It was being prepped, you know, so maybe the first poster of Pinnacle is a little bit like Magical Mystery Tour. You know, there's some pieces and parts. That poster is in '68. I had done the Crown of Creation at the time. For me, then, Pinnacle became a really large thing that ran for about a year or so. And there were a lot of people who really had great input into it, you know, who were from film schools, art schools, You know, in a sense, it was the underground culture of Los Angeles. You know, there I am, an artist, and as much as I'm a designer and making the publicity and the advertising for the company, I actually own a piece of the company. I'm very enterprising. I'm an entrepreneur. So these drawings originally were from 1969, entitled 99 St. Mark's Place. Every day for probably about 6 weeks, I would work on this paper, you know. On one piece of paper I would start the drawing. And this would go through the day, and sometimes it wouldn't be completed, it'd be completed the next day. Then I would start on the next one. You know, the mouse is being used between Rick Griffin and Moscoso. I'm drawing with them. But the mouse is, the mouse is a form that was in the culture. So why don't we take the mouse and put it through bends and twists and refractions and reflections, and let's see, you know, how that looks in its transition as a form, you know, through like an architectural space. It's very architectural. Why can't we just do images without words? Because an image can work that way. Look at the way a photograph works. So in that way, there was no reason to bring narrative to it. It was an abstraction. So therefore, you know,
something to manipulate. I mean, it's almost like manipulating Mickey Mouse.
Yes. We're taking liberty. We're going away from the Americana. But it was really just the pop art thing, is it? I'm going through a junk store and I see this Wilshire magazine from 1917. And in the back there's a little tiny ad, and there's a little, like an engraving of a face, you know, very crudely done for a false teeth ad. So I said, oh shit, this is great, you know? So I take the face and I overthrow it. So this is Johnny Deco, or Johnny, you know, and then this became KRLA's campaign for those who know better. I was taking the enigma, you know, which is always Alfred E. Newman to me as a kid, and then extracting from that, you know, with my tools and building this drawing. When the Stones were going on tour and they were launching their new album, I just happened to be there. Robert Frank came in the room and I was with Jagger. Jagger says, hey, you know, I think that Robert Frank would be great for this cover. So, who's this, John? Well, that's a guy from, from a sideshow. What's he have in his mouth? Those are eggs. So how do you know that? Well, Robert Frank just happened to be going by a tattoo booth and he saw these photographs from the 30s, so he took a picture of it. So that's where that came from. He takes Jagger off to a place. He's working with an 8mm camera. Goes back, develops and puts it all together. So he's copying the design style of the front to the back. Okay, and then I'm to take the whole thing and do a whole package, and so I continue to create all those things and put tape and have this handwriting on it that makes it like an art print. But this package was 35 cents a unit in that time. Most packages are always like 16, 18 cents. So they really put a lot of money into the packaging. We were in a culture that was turning into a corporate culture. So as the corporate culture eased in, you know, in terms of distribution and manufacturing, and needed music and needed television and cars and airplanes and needed all this stuff, you know, we get into this pop world that's being built in the context of pop modern thinking, you know, and all the writers, everybody's into it. Everyone's into symbology. I always had a girlfriend. I married in the beginning for about 1.5 years, and divorced. I learned about everything in, you know, basically 36 months that you would ever want to know, you know, beginning and end of what a marriage is all about, and having a child, and divorce court, and alimony, and all of that, really quickly. Chris Blackwell had $300 million that he had gotten from Polygram, the Bob Marley catalog. So he took that money and then he was making investments. So he had $1.5 million or $2 million and bought Fatburger as a license. So he had the contract for the trademark and the buildings. And I ended up being the architect on it. These are like storyboards, you know, and then what happens is that we put it into the machine, and then we're able to like picture sequences out of it. So we're plotting now how the camera will track and move in. And my father used to ask me what I did, and I used to say, let's keep it simple, Dad. You know, really what it's all about is me being a cultural designer. Oh, okay. I could understand that.